Somewhere in this ordinary cemetery on the edge of Tirana lies a man who ruled the entire country for 41 years. No signs point to him. I had tasked the groundskeeper. This is a story of what a country does with its dictator after he's gone. Before you can bury a man, you have to decide what he was. And Albania spent 30 years arguing about that. They put him under a marble pyramid. They put him on the holiest hill in the country. They put him in the ground with school children bringing flowers. And then, one morning, they came with shovels. Enver Hoxha ran Albania from 1944 until his death in 1985. 41 years, one man, one voice, one permitted opinion. He's the reason this country has 173,000 documented concrete bunkers scattered across it. He's the reason that, in 1967, Albania declared itself the world's first officially atheist state. More than 2,000 churches and mosques closed, demolished, or turned into warehouses and gyms. Praying was a crime for 24 years. He is the reason a private citizen could not legally own a car until 1991. 3 million people, a few thousand vehicles, nearly all of them state property. And he built something quieter than any of that. Every family in Albania had a file. They called it the biography, your family's political biography. One relative who fled abroad, one joke about the party. Into this file it went, and it followed you, your school, your job, your city, sometimes your marriage. The documented numbers are around 6,000 executed, tens of thousands imprisoned or exiled to remote villages, in a country of less than 3 million people. And the informers' estimates vary, but some run as high as 1 in 4 Albanians. He fired every ally he ever had, Yugoslavia, the Soviet Union, then China, each time because they had gone soft. By the end, Albania was alone in Europe, and by its own leadership's account, the last country on earth still doing socialism properly. That is the man. Now, where do you put him? On the 11th of April 1985, Radio Tirana stopped broadcasting music. The announcement came hours later. Enver Hoxha was dead. 76 years old, in his own bed, in his own villa, still in power. Never tried, never questioned, never punished. The country stopped, factories shut, flags came down. Thousands of people filed past the coffin, and the state filmed all of it. And here is the part that Western documentaries usually skip because it doesn't fit. Many of those tears were real. April 1985. Enver Hoxha dies. In his bed, still in power, never punished. And Albania grieves. Genuinely, many people did. When the only voice you've been allowed to hear for 40 years goes silent, some people cry. 3 years later, they finished this, a marble pyramid in the heart of the capital, a pharaoh's tomb for a Marxist, co-designed by his own daughter. Inside, his statue glowed under the skylight like a god. It lasted 3 years as a shrine. Then history knocked. The building was finished in 1988, reputedly the most expensive building Albania had ever made. Marble brought in from abroad. A sunken hole, a skylight positioned so that light fell directly onto the statue of the dead man. It was called the Enver Hoxha Museum, and it was designed by a team that included his own daughter and son-in-law. It opened in a country where people queued for milk, and it worked as a shrine for exactly 3 years. A conference center, a NATO base during the Kosovo War, TV studios, a nightclub called the Mummy. I'm not making that up. Then 20 years as a ruin where the bravest kids in Tirana slid down the marble. In 2023, they rebuilt it, not as a museum to him, but as a technology school for teenagers. His shrine teaches robotics now, and every evening, half of Tirana climbs to their dictator's tomb just to watch the sunset. But the pyramid is not a grave. The man himself is somewhere else, and finding him took me to the edge of the city. They buried him on the 16th of April 1985, and they did not choose the spot casually. The Martyrs cemetery sits on a hill above Tirana. It housed the partisans, the men and women who died fighting the Nazi occupation. It is, by a distance, the most sacred ground in the country. Above them stands Mother Albania, 12 meters of concrete, a star raised above the capital. Putting Hoxha there was an argument, not a funeral. It said, he belongs with them, same fight, same sacrifice, same soil. For 7 years, that argument was taught in schools. This is where they buried him first, with full state honors, on the most sacred hill in the country, among the partisans who died fighting the Nazis, and beneath Mother Albania herself. For 7 years, school children were brought here to lay flowers on his grave. Then, in May 1992, workers came early one morning with shovels and removed him. The partisans stayed. He didn't. She's still here. 12 meters of concrete, watching over Tirana. She just doesn't watch over him anymore. So what happened in those 7 years? Everything. In 1990, students at Tirana University went on hunger strike. In December, the party conceded a multi-party system, and in February 1991, a crowd walked into the main square of the capital and looked up at a 10-meter bronze statue of a man who had been dead for 6 years, and who, somehow, they were all still afraid of. I'm standing where, until February 1991, a 10-meter bronze statue of Enver Hoxha stared down at this square. He had been dead for 6 years, but people were still afraid of him. Then, one winter afternoon, around 100,000 of them decided they weren't afraid anymore. They threw cables around the statue's neck and they pulled down. They dragged the head through these streets. 46 years of dictatorship, and it didn't end with a battle or an election. It ended with a roll. Once the statue came down, the grave on the hill became a problem. You cannot drag a man's head through the streets in February and still bring school children to lay flowers on him in May. In May 1992, the new democratic government made a decision it did not advertise. There was no ceremony, no announcement the night before. Workers arrived at the Martyrs cemetery early in the morning, in the dark, and they took him out of the ground. Think about what that required. Someone had to sign the order. Someone had to decide where he would go instead. Someone had to be there at 5 in the morning on that hill doing it, while the partisans stayed exactly where they were. And they had options. They could have destroyed the remains. They could have put him somewhere secret so no one would ever find the spot. They could have built something, a marker, a plaque, a warning. Plenty of countries have done all three. Albania did none of it. They drove him to a public cemetery on the edge of the city, in a district most tourists never see, and they put him in the ground the way you would put anyone in the ground. A slab, a name, 2 dates. It took me a bus, a walk, and a conversation with the groundskeeper to find him. So the shrine became a school, and the grave became an empty spot on a sacred hill. His private world went the same way. Blloku, the block. For 45 years, 3 million Albanians were banned from walking down this street. Armed checkpoints on every corner, and no one outside knew what was behind them. Behind them was his house, 2,500 square meters, a private cinema, a pool, rumored escape tunnels, a library full of books that were banned for everyone else. His house. Since 2025, it's an artist's residency. The Prime Minister said the point is to fill it with everything Hoxha would have hated most. On open days, there's a beer van in the garden, so the shrine is a school. The house is full of artists.
Which leaves one question. Where is he?
Here is why the slap matters. Because every country that outlived a leader like this had to answer the same question, and almost none of them answered it the way Albania did. Lenin is still lying in Red Square, 100 years on, under glass with a queue outside. Stalin was in there with him until 1961. Then they moved him out to the Kremlin wall, which is a demotion, but he is still buried in the most important wall in the country. Mao is still on display in Tiananmen Square. Tito is in a marble hall in Belgrade with a garden around it, and people still visit on his birthday. Every one of those is a version of the same instinct. He was too big to be ordinary. Keep him separate. Put him somewhere the ground is different. I grew up in Bulgaria, Moscow's most loyal ally in the whole socialist bloc, the country Albania considered a traitor to communism. Our answer was a mausoleum in the center of Sofia. It stood there for 50 years. When they finally demolished it in 1999, it reportedly took several attempts because it refused to come down. Albania didn't argue with the building. Albania just moved the man.
Here he is, Enver Hoxha. No mausoleum, no honor guard, no eternal flame. A slab, a name, and 2 dates. As you can see, he rests between ordinary people. In 1992, the New Democracy dug him out of the state cemetery and moved him here to a public grave, which, if you think about it, is the harshest sentence Albania could give him. Not hatred, ordinariness. He built 5 forts underground to survive his enemies. He wrapped his country in 170,000 bunkers. And in the end, history just walked past him. The bunkers are museums. The shrine is a school. The house is full of artists. And he is here. Albania won.
The title of this video asks a question, so here's the answer. You bury him like everyone else, not because he deserves the mercy, because it is the only punishment a dead man can still feel. A mausoleum keeps him important. A destroyed grave makes him a martyr. An ordinary slab in an ordinary cemetery that you have to ask a stranger to help you find, that finishes him. Next time someone tells you strongmen are forever, send them this video and tell me in the comments which country's communist secrets I should decode next.